all the materials you sent us. Yeah, all about achieving success and financial freedom. Looks like you've got some research articles, some personal notes in there. That's great. It's really clear that you're seriously committed to self-improvement, and we're going to help you break down all the key takeaways from all this stuff.
And joining me today to help us make sense of all this, we have an expert who loves helping people like you really understand this stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, one of the things that really stood out to me right away was the whole section on breaking free from porn addiction.
It's a tough topic, and people don't like to talk about it, but it's got to be addressed because it can really affect your journey towards, living a fulfilling life, a successful life.
It's true. And, what's really interesting here is this one source directly compares porn addiction to drug addiction.
And they both can actually rewire your brain's reward system, leading to a lot of negative consequences like compulsive behavior.
Yeah, yeah. When I was looking through your notes, I noticed you highlighted neuroplasticity.
And this source, it explains it really well. It basically means that your brain isn't fixed. It can change based on your experiences and your habits.
Exactly. And that's both the challenge and the hope when it comes to addiction, right?
The challenge is that, well, these neural pathways have been kind of reinforced over time. But the hope is that with consistent effort, you can rewire them. The material mentions CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, as something that's really effective.
To help people change their negative thought patterns, behaviors, all that.
So it's more than willpower.
Yeah.
You have to understand the science behind addiction and use proven methods to retrain your brain.
Exactly. And one of the key strategies mentioned here is identifying your triggers.
So those are the specific situations or emotions or even times of day that make you more susceptible to, engaging with porn.
Yeah.
And in your notes, you mentioned that stress is a big one for you.
And this source even gives the example of creating a stress-busting routine to help.
Yeah. So thinking about your triggers, that's a crucial first step.
What are the things that lead you down that path? Is it boredom, loneliness, anxiety?
Once you know what they are, you can, start developing strategies to manage them.
Right. And this source even suggests replacing the habit with something that also triggers dopamine release, but in a healthy way.
Like things like exercise or creative pursuits, even spending time in nature.
This can have similar effects on the brain, but with positive results,
I really like that, replacing a bad habit with a good one. It's not just about stopping something. It's about filling that space with something that helps you.
Right. It's like they say, nature abhors a vacuum. If you just try to eliminate a habit without replacing it, it's much harder to make it last.
And it's also important to remember, you don't have to go through this alone.
This source really emphasizes the need to seek support, whether it's therapy, a support group, or even just talking to a friend.
Absolutely. Having that support system can be so valuable.
All this talk about breaking free from addiction requires some serious self-control, don't you think?
For sure. You're right. To overcome any kind of addiction, whether it's porn, substances, or even just unhealthy behaviors, it takes a ton of mental discipline.
And that ties right into the next part, which is all about mastering your mind. And that connects to that recurring theme of taking control that you underlined in your notes.
It's all connected, for sure. And this source gets into some really fascinating research on how self-control actually works.
They compare it to a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets.
Okay, so how do we actually exercise this self-control muscle? I know you're a big believer in meditation and mindfulness.
They're so powerful. And this source specifically mentions a study
showing that even just a few minutes of daily meditation could lead to big improvements, like focus, attention, and emotional regulation.
It's almost like a workout, but for your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for executive function, decision-making, all that.
So by practicing mindfulness, we're essentially strengthening our ability to resist those urges, the impulsive ones.
And to make choices that are actually aligned with our goals.
Exactly. And this source takes it a step further. It suggests combining mindfulness with a technique called habit stacking.
So that's where you link a new habit, a good habit, with one you already have. For example, you might decide that every time you brush your teeth, you spend a minute focusing on your breath, being mindful.
That's a great tip. So easy. And from your notes, I know you're also big into journaling. Does that connect with mastering the mind?
Oh, absolutely. This material actually talks about journaling as a way to become more self-aware.
Noticing your thought patterns, to catch those negative self-talk loops that can sabotage your progress.
Yeah.
When you write things down, you can start to see them more objectively.
And you can start developing strategies to challenge them, to reframe them.
It's like becoming an observer of your own mind.
You start to notice those automatic thoughts, those reactions that could be holding you back.
That's exactly it. And this source even suggests using journaling to track your progress and to celebrate your wins.
That can help build momentum and motivation, especially when you're feeling discouraged.
Oh, that's such a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in what we haven't accomplished yet.
Yeah.
But taking a moment to acknowledge how far you've come
Yeah.
can be really motivating. Yeah.
Right. It's all about shifting your perspective
Yeah.
and focusing on the positive.
Speaking of shifting your perspective, the material also mentions visualization.
It sure does. It highlights this concept called mental rehearsal, where you basically imagine yourself successfully overcoming challenges, achieving your goals.
So it's not just daydreaming, it's like creating a blueprint, a mental one for success.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that neuroscientists, they've shown that your brain often can't tell the difference between a vivid imagination and real life. So when you do mental rehearsal, you're actually training your brain for success,
That's incredible. It's like giving your brain a preview of what it's like to achieve your goals.
which can then make you more likely to actually take the steps to make them happen.
It's all about rewiring your brain for success. One thought, one habit, one visualization at a time.
I love that. And it reminds me of the next big thing from the material, achieving success in life. Now, success can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. You mentioned in your notes that that you want to feel more fulfilled
Yeah.
and that you want to, make a positive impact on the world.
What does success actually look like to you?
For me, it's about living a life that's in line with my values, feeling a sense of purpose, and making a difference.
Contributing to something bigger than myself.
I love that. And this source, it really emphasizes that achieving that kind of success, it's not about magic. It's not an overnight thing. It's about consistency.
It is. It's about those small things you do every day.
The habits you build, the choices you make every single day. It's about showing up, even when you don't feel like it.
And that brings us back to self-control, doesn't it?
It's about building those positive habits, the little wins, they add up over time.
Exactly. Consistency is the key to unlocking your potential in anything.
Overcoming addiction, mastering your mind, achieving your goals, it all comes down to showing up, doing the work every single day.
I think it's important to remember, though, it's not always going to be easy, right?
There'll be setbacks, times when you feel like giving up.
But what makes successful people different is their ability to embrace the tough stuff and to learn from it.
Well said. This source actually talks about developing a growth mindset, It's the belief that you can always learn and improve, even from mistakes.
So failure isn't a setback, it's a chance to grow and learn.
Exactly. It's
Uh,
about embracing the journey, knowing it's not going to be perfect, and using those rough patches to reach your goal.
And I think it's about the people you surround yourself with, too.
This source talks about a supportive network of friends, mentors, even accountability partners.
You're right. The people around us, they have a huge impact on our mindset, our ability to achieve our goals.
Surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, challenge you, support you through thick and thin, that can make all the difference.
So we've talked about breaking free from addiction, mastering self-control, defining your own version of success, and now let's get into that last piece, building wealth and achieving financial freedom.
This is where it gets really interesting.
And this material has some really concrete strategies I think you'll love.
I'm excited to hear them. It's clear that it's more than just making money, right? It's about managing it well, creating real security.
You got it. And this source really digs into why just relying on a paycheck isn't enough. It points out that wealthy people, they often have multiple sources of income.
From investments and businesses to side hustles and passive income.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like diversifying so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And one of the most important things here is the power of compound interest.
Ugh, the eighth wonder of the world. I remember reading about this in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book you recommended.
Such a classic for good reason. And this source really breaks down how even small investments, if you're consistent, can grow like crazy over time, thanks to compound interest.
It's like planting a little seed that turns into this huge tree over time.
I love that analogy. It really highlights why starting early is so important.
Even if you can only invest a little bit, the sooner you start, the more time your money has to grow.
So time is money, literally when it comes to investing. But it's not just about investing, right? This source also talks about budgeting and living within your means.
Oh, absolutely. It stresses the need to track your expenses.
Figure out where you can cut back and automate your savings so you're always putting something away.
So it's about being intentional, making sure your money is working for you, not the other way around.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your finances, creating a life of abundance and freedom.
This is all starting to make a lot more sense.
Like when you finally start to understand something that used to feel so complicated.
That's the beauty of the deep dive, right?
We're getting past the surface and really starting to understand those core ideas, the ones that can lead to real, lasting change.
This has been so insightful. I'm sure our listeners taking it all in. But before we move on, let's just quickly recap what we've talked about.
And highlight some of the key takeaways.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. A quick recap will help us remember everything and get ready for the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so we've talked about a lot. Breaking free from addiction, neuroplasticity, all that. Then we got into mastering your mind with things like meditation, journaling, habit stacking. And we just finished a great conversation about building wealth, financial freedom through compound interest, and being smart with your budget.
Wow, it's really amazing how all these things are connected. It's like they're all part of a bigger picture.
Of living a truly fulfilling and successful life.
I totally agree. And it's like that whole taking control thing you were talking about before, it applies to everything, right?
For our thoughts, our habits, our money, we can make choices that really shape our future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things we can take away from this whole deep dive. It's easy to feel like things just happen to us, but this material shows that we have way more control than we think.
It's about changing your mindset.
Yeah.
Going from scarcity to abundance. Instead of thinking, I'll never beat this addiction or I'll never be wealthy, we can choose to believe that with the right mindset, the right effort, anything is possible.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important theme that keeps popping up: progress over perfection.
It's so easy to get stuck thinking we need to be perfect, and then we mess up and feel like giving up.
Oh, I've definitely been there. But this source reminds us that it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. It's about celebrating those small wins and learning from the setbacks.
Exactly. And that's where having that support system can be so important, right? Being around people who get your goals, who can encourage you when you're down, who'll keep you accountable, that can be huge.
It's like having a team cheering you on, reminding you how strong you are, even when you forget.
hmm
When you look at all the stuff we've discussed today, what are some of the most important insights for our listener?
Well, for me, it all comes back to that idea of taking control. We've talked about specific tools like meditation and journaling, but at its heart, it's about choosing to be in charge of your own life. It's about looking at those areas where you feel stuck or unhappy and saying, I'm not going to settle for this, I'm going to change it.
I love that. It's about taking ownership of your life, your choices, your future. It can seem scary, but it's also so empowering.
It really is. And that's why I think it's so important to start small. You don't have to change everything overnight. Just pick one area where you want to improve.
And focus on making small changes you can actually stick with.
So maybe instead of saying, I'm going to meditate for an hour every day, you start with 5 minutes in the morning.
And you gradually build from there.
Exactly. Or instead of trying to cut all your spending at once, maybe you track it for a month and then see where you can cut back. It's about building momentum, creating positive feedback loops.
Positive feedback loops. I like that. It's like each little win, each step in the right direction makes you more committed, more motivated to keep going.
It's about creating a cycle of success. And as you see those little successes adding up, it builds your confidence. It makes you believe that bigger things are possible.
And that's what's so inspiring about this material. It reminds us that we're capable of so much more than we think. We can break free from those beliefs that hold us back. We can overcome challenges and create lives filled with purpose and abundance and joy.
I couldn't agree more. It all starts with a decision, A decision to stop settling and to step into your full potential.
And I hope our listener is feeling that right now. That sense of possibility. This deep dive isn't just about information. It's about igniting that belief in yourself.
The belief that will push you forward.
So well said. It's about remembering that you already have everything you need to create the life you want.
Okay, so before we move on to how to put all this into action, I wanted to address something you said in your notes. You mentioned feeling a little overwhelmed by all the advice out there. You even wrote, everyone has a different opinion on how to be successful.
Yeah, that's a common feeling. There's just so much information these days, it's hard to know what to focus on.
It is, but I think the key is to remember that there's no one right way to be successful. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's why you have to be picky about the advice you take.
And make it fit your own needs, your own goals.
I agree completely. It's about finding what speaks to you, what feels right, what you're actually willing to do consistently.
And that might mean trying different things. It's okay to experiment and see what works best for you. The important thing is to stay curious, stay open to learning, and never stop growing.
I love that. It really is a journey, a journey of self-discovery. And the more you learn about yourself, the better you get at making choices that lead to real fulfillment.
And speaking of choices, that brings us to how to put all this into action. What are some practical things our listener can do right now to start using these principles in their life?
Okay, so we've covered the big ideas: taking control, progress over perfection, the power of compound growth. But now let's get practical.
I like it. Let's talk action steps. What can our listener actually take away from all this?
Well, you specifically asked in your notes, what one thing should I focus on first? And even though everything's connected, I think the most important place to start is your mindset.
Yeah, I think that's right. This one source really emphasizes that, your thoughts, they actually create your reality. If you believe you can do something, you're way more likely to actually do what it takes to make it happen.
It's like that Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. So I would say spend some time looking at your beliefs.
About yourself, about success, about money. What are those beliefs that might be holding you back? The ones that tell you you can't do it.
And once you figure out what those beliefs are, the next step is to challenge them. This source talks about using affirmations.
Which are like positive statements. You repeat them to yourself to kind of reprogram your mind.
Affirmations, yeah, they might sound a little out there, but there's actually science behind it. When you repeat positive things to yourself over and over, you can actually start to change your brain.
And create new beliefs that help you reach your goals.
So instead of thinking, I'm bad with money, maybe you start saying, I am a wealth magnet or something like that. It might feel weird at first, but if you do it enough, those new beliefs can stick, and then they start to change your actions.
And it's not just about thinking differently, it's also about taking action. This source talks about setting goals, really specific ones.
And then breaking them down into smaller steps.
So instead of just saying, I want to be financially free, maybe your goal is to save a certain amount each month or to invest in a specific type of asset. It's about making those goals real, something you can actually do.
Yeah, exactly. And once you have those steps, it's all about consistency, building those habits and routines that support your goals.
So maybe you decide to meditate for 10 minutes every morning or work on your side hustle for 30 minutes each night. It's about making those little actions part of your day so you do them without even thinking.
And it's okay if you're not perfect, It's about progress, not perfection. If you miss a day, don't get down on yourself. Just get back on track the next day. The important thing is to keep moving forward, even if it's just a tiny step.
And that's where being kind to yourself comes in. This source talks about self-compassion, especially when you make mistakes. We all mess up sometimes. It's how you handle it that matters.
Absolutely. Don't dwell on the mistakes. Think of them as learning experiences. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I do better next time?
And remember, you don't have to do it all alone. This source talks a lot about building a support system, whether it's therapy or a support group or just being around people who get it, who have similar goals.
Having those people in your life, the ones who believe in you, who can give you advice, it makes such a huge difference.
So, to recap, the big takeaways for our listener are: focus on your mindset, challenge those negative beliefs, set clear goals, take action consistently, and be kind to yourself along the way.
And never forget, you have the power to create the life you want. It starts with deciding to believe in yourself, taking action, and never giving up.
This has been such a great deep dive. I hope our listeners feeling inspired, ready to create a life of success and fulfillment. Remember, you are capable of amazing things. Believe in yourself, take action, and keep reaching for your goals. Thanks for joining us on Deep Dive. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into some really interesting ideas. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.